one of many places, nations that's making more moves to towards this digital technocracy. All right, under the guise of peace and safety. All right, one of the narratives being pushed for the push for digital technocracy, going into tracking and the tracing of these illegal immigrants. All right, which over there in Europe is dealing very heavily with a lot of those European nations. So, under that narrative, one of many narratives, all right, there's this need for, again, of this system where basically, people could be surveilled and things of that nature. But nevertheless, getting into this video, all right, like I said, just so the latest news, dealing with the push, one of many nations, the enclosing of this beast system. So without further ado, I just got this channel here, the Angry Bootneck. All right. And without further ado, I'm going to play this video, Lord willing.
E-card scheme, the poll reveals. Yes, as usual, the great British public know what's what, don't they? They know far more than the collection of reprobates and hypocritical imbeciles that run the country. Because there's numerous reasons to be very, very sceptical about the digital ID scheme. People like me that have pointed out that the British government seems to be operating under the idea that Demolition Man was a marvellous how-to guide on how to run a nation state. I've been saying this for years. It's not all on Labour, of course. Every shambling incompetent that's run the show in the UK for the last 25 years, which is to say they've been treating George Orwell's masterpiece 1984 as if it's an instruction manual on how to run a country. So I'll read you this story and I'll give you 5 rock-solid reasons why you should be extremely sceptical of the androgynous android and, everybody else in Parliament that thinks it's a good idea to build a gigantic database with all of your personal information on it and then stick it all on a portable hard drive and leave it in the back of a taxi, the driver of which sends 25% of his income to the Taliban every month. Okay, starting at the top, the public fear Keir Starmer's digital ID card scheme will not be safe. Yeah, it won't be safe. It won't be safe. Definitely not. The amount of scandals over the last couple of decades where pissed up MPs have left top secret dossiers on trains and buses and in the back of taxis and tucked behind a seat in a plane are replete. I'm not even going to bore you by pulling the individual stories up. Suffice it to say there's been dozens of them. So why would you trust these morons with any more data than is absolutely necessary? It says polling has found that almost 2/3 of Britons don't trust the government to keep their digital identity. I wouldn't trust the government to run me a bath, let alone keep my digital identity secure. I would rather trust Ian Huntley to do the babysitting than trust a British politician with my data. Thanks all the same. Polling for civil liberties group Big Brother Watch found that 63% of Britons don't trust the government to keep their personal information secure. Yes, because Britain's full of sensible people. How many times have I said it in the past? Trust the public. The public know better than the morons that run the show. Matthew Feeney, advocacy manager of BBW, said that YouGov survey of 2,153 people shows that people fear their data would be stolen in a cyber attack. He told the Daily Mail, on top of digital ID scheme being a civil liberties disaster, it would also represent a significant cybersecurity risk. The government should abandon plans for a digital scheme immediately. The warning follows a series of cyber attacks against British national infrastructure and a colossal data leak when the details of more than 18,000 people who had applied for asylum under the Afghan resettlement scheme ended up in the hands of the Taliban. And that's only a recent one. This is only the most recent of dozens of examples of incompetent civil servants and politicians being about as responsible with your most important data as Diane Abacus would be if she was responsible for, running an all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet. There wouldn't be anything left for the customers. In fact, he'd be shoveling it all into her face with reckless abandon the second the owner turned his back. The Prime Minister is said to be looking at the idea because he's desperately thrashing around to find a solution to the small boats crisis. Think of this rationally, right? As usual, I'm not going to get to the bottom of the story because I'm just going to go on a rant, but think of this rationally, okay? It's not rocket science, so I don't need to go slow. We know that the people breaking in on dinghies are illegal. None of them have right of abode in the UK. None of them, or else they'd fly into Heathrow. It's cheaper. We know they aren't allowed to stay, technically. I mean, logically they aren't, but they are anyway. We know nothing about them. We don't know who they are. They have no documents at all. And they are definitely illegal. But they are still all allowed to stay anyway, okay? So this is difficult to grasp, but hear me out. If we introduce digital ID, and all of you lot have all your data on a big computer, the people coming over on the dinghies won't have any digital ID, But lo and behold, they're in the exact same place that they are now, and they're all allowed to stay anyway. So what difference will digital ID make to the dinghy divers? Any difference? No. Zero difference. So all your data is going to get collected, and it's going to make precisely no dent in the illegal immigration numbers, because they'll be in the exact same situation they're in now, and they're all allowed to stay anyway. So this is like some sort of evil scheme to try and convince morons, and it appears to have worked on 37% of the general public, that letting the government have all of your personal data would somehow help a migrant crisis that they've created on purpose to convince you that it's a good idea to give them all your data.
So you see, man, because there's a lot of holes when it comes to, because you see, at the end of the day, Esau, he's not so bright, all right? He's not bright at all, right? All type of loopholes, all right? Esau's being called out, from left and right, all right? It's like going back to the whole, what do you call it? Basically the system to where, oh man, I think it was on the phone. I forgot what it was, but basically they had this system up where, or prelude to what they want to have up and running, to where, and I can't think of it because I didn't partake in it. I didn't give a shit about it. But basically, this tracking and tracing type of system, and they had it set up to where, this is back in 2022, 21, 22, because people were desperate to get back to quote unquote normal. So, of course, everyone ran down there to get those jump shots, right? Everyone was quick to download these apps, and everyone was, for the most part, well, I'll say a lot of people were quick to get on board with the program. Esau had a lot of, he was testing a lot of pilots and things of that nature. So going back to this tracking and tracing system, to where basically it was a small form of being able to partake in society, buying and selling, all right, the whole QR codes and things of that nature. So they had it set up to where, and people were calling Esau out on it because basically you would register with this program or whatever the case was, whatever it was, and people would basically they would basically ping you because you were around someone, or you were suspected of being around someone that was infected, all right, and things of that nature. It was just it was basically a shit show. It was basically a mess. So like I said, even with this, pretty much the shit that Esau puts out there, like I said, man, it's just being called out left and right. All right. And all in all, that's why Esau, man, he's going to have to come down with that great wrath. All right. People are calling him out left and right. He's going to have to come down with that great wrath. He's already behind closed doors, putting law into place, put laws and legislation into place. All right. And like I just said, because I forgot what this particular thing was, because I didn't partake. I could care less, but that's the thing about it. Because I'm gonna grab this real quick, because at some point, we're all gonna have to for the most part get down to an extent until we can't, if that makes sense. Well, we're all going to have to get down with the program, because it's like years ago when, because at one point, you didn't have to because, the credit cards, they didn't have the chip on it, right? But eventually got to a point where, hey, well, if your card doesn't have the chip on it, then basically, again, it was a low form of buying and selling, so you could only beat around the bush for so long. So like I said, overall, when it comes down to this new system that's more and more being implemented, all right, more and more of these nations are pushing towards this digitalized system, all right, digital ID cards and things of that nature. it has been reported on by the elder from I believe I was out there in Dallas about all these Vietnamese, right? That they weren't they weren't down with the program of they didn't want to partake in this transition, all right, into the new system. So millions of Vietnamese, they woke up to basically their bank accounts being shut down, something along that line. So just making a point, just as far as, like I said, at some point, we're going to only be able to beat around the bush for so long, all right, until we can't. We could play the game until we can't. All right, so I'm gonna grab this real quick in Psalm 142. Psalm 14. I'm sorry. Psalm 140. And starting at 2. Matter of fact, verse 5. Psalm 140 and 5. The proud have laid, Slakia, the proud have hid a snare for me, and cords. They have spread a net by the wayside. They that have set gins for me, Selah. So you see, all right, Esau is setting it up to where, either get down with the program, or hey, like the prophecy states in Revelation 13, you won't be able to buy and sell. All right, and like it says in Psalm 124, I do believe, going into Esau being a fowler, right? And Israel is likened unto a bird, commonly a speckled bird, right? So Esau, he's setting it up to where, hey, either get down with the program or else. And what we see going on, if you're paying attention, all these test runs going on in these different nations, these different places. All right. So it's only a matter of time before, like I said, more and more, however he does it, however it plays out here in America, to where, hey, we're only going to be able to beat around the bush for so long until we can. We're only going to be able to play the game until we can't. So Esau, he's setting the snares up, setting the traps up, right? And play some more of this.
In it, the plans would see digital IDs given to all people legally entitled to reside in Britain, and they would be used for employment verification and rental agreements. The concept was dated back to Tony Blair. Oh, okay. Well, if the Dark Prince of Evil floated it as an idea, it's definitely worth doing, isn't it? Those on the left argued they would be used repressively by future governments. Yeah, well, and the woke are all on board now because they've been successfully captured by the establishment. The old left was sceptical. The new left can't get enough of it. Tory MP Andrew Griffith warned yesterday that civil liberties would be at risk if a digital ID is implemented, and that a government that sought prison for tweets cannot be trusted with more control. Yes, Andrew, you win base comment of the day. Well done, son. He posted on X, a state that can't run the NHS IT system or secure our borders shouldn't be trusted to hold the keys to every citizen's identity. Yeah, again, I wouldn't trust them to run a lemonade stand in my front garden. This is how incompetent they are. And then lo and behold, what did I just say? Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey indicated he's open to considering his party's opposition. He told the Lib Dems conference that he's now open to the idea, provided they don't curb freedoms. Yeah, well, they're not just going to come round and tell you that, are they, you baldy gimp? Of course they aren't, but we know what's coming. So again, this is staggering. I mean, how stupid are people? As I've said, the ingenious manoeuvre from the woke sociopaths is turning the left into their creatures. That's what the woke project was all about. Think about it. The old left, Michael Foot and Peter Shaw and people like that, they actually had the interest of working people at heart. The modern woke thing, whatever it is, the new left.
And you see the whole thing between the right and the left, like it says in Revelation 13. I'm gonna go to it. Revelation 13 and 11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, right? So going into the whole two-party system, right, which, they're really feathers from off the same bird, all right? But nevertheless, stirring up all this chaos, all right, one side against another, and even more so trying to put Jake on pin the blame on Jake, because like I always talk about Esau with his narratives, but with that, it's going to, well, as it says, and he spake as a dragon, going back into the Athenian, an extremely strict lawgiver, right? Which, with that being said, all right, like I said, Esau, he stirs the pot, all right? He stirs the pot, he stirs the jar, he shakes the jar, and the ants go at it, You know, the ants blame one another. All right, both sides blame one another, and they start going at it. And that way, you know, Esau, he's able to implement his draconian measures. All right, his strict measures. Like I said, behind closed doors, Esau, he's putting all type of laws into place so that when the lid finally blows off this thing, he's going to be able to again implement those draconian measures. All right, those strict laws. All right, and that way, you know, going back to like I was mentioning with his whole enterprise, being able to track, all right, control, trace, all right, because he having that godlike complex, he wants to be like the Most High. You see, so everyone is being set up on this system, all your information of who you are, all right, you know, your whereabouts and things of that nature, right? You know, like the scriptures say, the Lord's eyes are 10,000 times brighter than the sun, going into the angels and how they perform the will of Yahweh B'Shem Al Shai. That's why we say Yahweh B'Shem Al Shai B'Hashem Rakakwadash. All right, Harakakwadas, going into the holy angels, all right, that perform the will of Yahweh B'Shem Al Shai to and fro throughout the earth. Well, this is what Esau's trying to mimic on the left hand. All right, with all this is why he has cameras everywhere. He wants to be like the Most High. He wants to be everywhere at the same time. He wants to be able to track, control, trace, be able to read your thoughts, mind, and things of that nature. All right, he wants to control you. He wants to control us. So this is what it's all about. All right, but play a little more of this.
Is now pro-war. Think of that. The Guardian is like the warmongers' gazette these days. These people are deranged. The new left is pro-war, pro-government surveillance, pro-big pharma, pro-big bank. Think of it. That's all they did during the whole Brexit campaign. The new left are pro-capitalist, pro-big bank, pro-big pharma, pro-war, pro-very, very, very devout religious fundamentalists, as long as they've got a bit of a tan. Up is down, left is right. These people are completely deranged, and now the liberal is saying, oh, we definitely want the authoritarian government to have everybody's data. You can suck my stump, Edward. Big Brother Watch interim director Rebecca Vincent said nobody voted for it. It's not in the Labour Party manifesto. There's never been a public consultation, so they can suck it. Well, she didn't have that last part, but they can. Mandatory digital ID would fundamentally reverse the nature of our relationship with the state, turning Britain into a checkpoint society where an enormous burden will be placed on law-abiding people in having to prove ourselves to go about our everyday lives. Yes, Rebecca, well done. Aye. So take a leaf out of Rebecca's book, ladies and gentlemen. Just say no. Computer says no. Definitely. Because this won't make a single jot of difference to the dinghy divers, because they're not allowed in anyway. Apparently they're not allowed in, but they're all allowed in. Do you see how this works? So even though they're definitely not allowed in anyway, now, they're definitely not allowed because they're all illegal and they've got no documents, they can't prove who they are, and we don't know anything about them. So they're definitely not allowed in, but they are allowed in. So they just let them in anyway and give them the Hilton, and then they go and roger people in parks and blow themselves up. So they're allowed to anyway. So the digital ID won't make a jot of difference. A centralised digital ID will allow the government and whoever they sell the information to, or leave it in the back of a taxi, to track you far more easily than they ever have before. We already know they're using software on these 50,000 CCTV cameras all across the country to track you. They can track you everywhere, but they can't track Iqbal Rafiki when he just rocks up in a dinghy. So what's the point in it? There's no data security. You'll be forced to comply to do everything from picking up your mail to buying some cans. There's no way around it. It's of no use to the scumbags that are breaking in. There is zero transparency from the Machiavellian sociopaths that run the state. And worst of all, and I think this is something not a lot of people have thought about, is the fact that it's going to make you dependent on technology. You know how, like, back in the good old days, when you turn up somewhere with a copy of your provisional driver's license or something, as long as you kept your provisional driving license in a biscuit tin in your house, you always had it. You could always use it. How many times in the last few decades has the system failed? Oh, we can't do that. The system's down. If everything is reliant on a digital system, something as small as a power outage will make a bog standard trip to the off license so you can drink yourself into sweet oblivion just so you can forget about your problems for 2 hours. It'll make that impossible. They'll be like, oh, sorry, the system's down. You can't have a drink. Just go and have a glass of council pop and sit in your house lamenting the fact you used to live in a free country, you dopey twat. How's about that? Anyway, but that's my opinions for the day. Let me know if you disagree, if you think.
And you see, that's the thing about it, because, hey, people, you see Esau, he's just sitting back, he's watching, collecting information, all right? He knows where everyone's at, right? Because, Esau, he has a whole list, all right? He has a whole list. So, in the very near future, it's going to be very dystopian. like I said, right now, and it's all according to Yahweh Bashim Shah's will, because through the Lord's power. All right, Esau, the fact that this internet hasn't gone down yet, like I said, Esau, he's still collecting information. All right, people like this are able to voice their opinion while they can, because the time's going to come when, hey, you better look at China. All right, you speak out against the government or whatever the case may be. You even think such a thought that goes contrary to the agenda of the elites, then hey, you're going to be X'd out of society. All right. So, this is the MO of the elites, man. All right. They have their database. I'm going to go to this in Revelation 13. Because as I read from verse 11, when you read on down and going into how, matter of fact, verse 15, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as will not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So literally, all right, and because there are going to be, pertaining to the elect, those that are going to get martyred for not taking that sea hip. All right, but you could simply just be X'd out of society for refusing to take that sea hip. All right, so Esau is setting it up, like it says in verse 16, and he calls it all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. So again, and this is what we're seeing. All right, and this happened rather quickly. All right, as far as this system, because like I said in verse 15, he has power to give life unto the image of the beast. All right, through his technology, as it says in Daniel, knowledge being increased, right? Esau, now has the technology to bring ultimately Yahweh Bashim Shah's will to pass. All right, because again, it's all of Yahweh Bashim Shah in the first place. But now Esau, he has his technological advancements to where he can set the system up and integrate everyone into it. All right. And if you don't, well, like I said, those that don't want to worship the image of the beast will be killed. All right. Some in a literal sense, but to many, or to those that refuse, you won't be able to buy and sell, like it says. And that's why the scripture said that the just are going to have to live by faith, because the elect, under no circumstances, are going to take that MOTB. But Yahweh Bashim Shah already has the, everything set up in place. All right. However it plays out on the behalf of the elect, the Lord's already got them covered. All right. But going into that word mark, because the mark, when you go into the Greek, going into that charagma, which is the actual device that's going to be inserted, and the root word of that going into the karax, which is the actual instrument, syringe, needle, or that trench. All right, like it tells you in the book of Luke, how Esau sit in a trench. Pull that up real quick, because it's the same root word. It's the same root word in Luke 19 and 43. For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee and capacity round and keep thee in on every side. And that's why America is revitalized, a regeneration of the ancient pagan Roman Empire. All right, which when you read in that Revelation 13, it talks about that. It talks about the earlier verses. It talks about that the beast having that wound by its sword, right? It being wounded, right? Because America, again, is nothing but the regeneration of the pagan Roman the ancient pagan Roman Empire. So again, now they have the technology to perform this enterprise. And again, as I said before, they are going to get to a certain point, but it's going to be very short-lived. All right, they are going to see a lot of people. All right, by the billions. But Yahushua is going to come. All right. And like I said, rain on this parade, piss on this parade. But going into that root word again, that trenching, and because this is what we're seeing. All right. Esau, he's closing in. He's compassing mainly the tribes. All right. Compassing about. All right. Cornering everyone in, backing everyone into a corner. To where, hey, if you don't want to partake in this, bow down to this image. And the ultimate form of what they call selling your soul is going to be in the form of that C-hip, taking that C-hip. If you don't want to take the C-hip, well, hey, you're just going to be cast out. But making a point that because that same root word, as I just read in Luke, it's the same root word here for trench. You know, that karax, that palisade, right? Which when you look up a palisade, you know, with the pointed sharp tip, you know, like I said, basically the needle, the syringe, the instrument that's going to be used in inserting that device, because it is a carnal thing, unlike what some camps teach. All right, it is a physical and carnal thing. All right, Esau is not spiritual whatsoever. All right. And that's why when you read verse 18, man, it says, here is wisdom, let him have understanding. Count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Right? Because Esau, he wants to make us the barcode, man. All right? As certain of these guys, I'm not going to mention any names, but certain of these guys, these devils, talking about how, hey, basically, in not so many words, hey, you won't need a cell phone. You will be the cell phone. Right. You see, you won't need to walk around with debit cards, credit cards. You will be the credit card, basically, and so on and so forth. You will be the technology. And it sounds cool. You know, it sounds cool. But there is a judgment for you know, taking that C-hip. But to make another point, because going back into that mark, like I mentioned, the root words, right? Karagma, which is the actual C-hip. And then you got the karax, right? And we're seeing this now, all right? You know, that trench, that compassing, backing everyone into a corner, all right? You know, the karax. But then when you go to the root word of that, matter of fact, get it, going into the root word of karax, which goes back to grapho. So the root word of karax, again, it says grapho, and it says to write with reference to the form of the letters, a tablet, a parchment. It says to write with reference to the contents of the writing, to draw up in writing, to fill with writing, to give information. So you see, basically, that database, you see, you know, you can't make this up, man. Hey, and that's why, again, as I read the last verse, man, hey, you know, the Wadi al-Bashmal Shai, you know, because again, we've been given the wisdom and understanding, all right? The Wadi al-Bashmal Shai, you know, from our apostles and our elders, man, you know, through the Holy Spirit of Yahweh Bashmal Shai, we have their understanding. We as far as what John the Revelator, where he saw, we're able to break it down from the apostles and the bishops, man. All right, we're able to break these things down in its totality, all right, in full. As much as this is a stumbling block to a lot of Israelites, but nevertheless, someone does have the 100% truth, and it has to be from the apostles and bishops of Great Millstone. It has to be. So this is what this is going into, man. You know, like I said, man, guys like this are still able to voice their opinions and this and that, because Esau, he's just sitting back and collecting data, and by the time the Lord allows him to make his move, hey, he'll know where everyone's at. He'll know what list to put everyone on. All right. you know, probably send certain people off to certain concentration camps so they can be quote unquote re-educated and so on and so forth, man. It's very sinister when it comes to Esau, the elites, man. It is very sinister. That's why, again, the Lord's going to have to come back swiftly. All right. And like I said, man, that's why it's going to be very short-lived. You know, but nevertheless, Yahweh Bashim Shai is going to allow Esau to get to a certain point before, you know, he sweeps the rug from under these elites, man. You know, so Lord willing, this is edifying. All praises to Yahweh Bashim Shai. Shalom to you. Hopefully, luck.